A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey Herman and Corin, we did some episodes talking about the best hardware for voice recognition work at the computer. We were looking specifically at gooseneck microphones in an episode, and I mentioned, I think, if not I'll do so now, that I've done my own benchmarks for those who are really into voice and actually want to see some real life data as to how different microphones compare. I've recorded the same 3 sentences, or paragraphs actually, about the history of coffee. That's just what I came up with as a test sample, and I recorded that same 3 paragraphs with every microphone I own, ranging from this phone, which is the OnePlus I record most of these prompts on, through to Samsung Q2U, gooseneck microphones, you name it. There's about 20 or 30 ones. Ran that all through Whisper and computed the word error rate, WER, to try to actually get some clarity on what is actually the most performant microphone, and even looking at different recording differences. The results were actually very surprising. Guess what came in as the lowest WER was actually the OnePlus. Outperformed the other ones. That might speak to the importance of proximity to the microphone, because I'm literally recording it, addressing the microphone directly. But it also maybe says something about what we think is going to be the best hardware isn't always the most expensive hardware. I'd like to ask today Herman and Corin about mobile options for those into voice transcription, because I think I look a bit ridiculous holding my phone around up to my mouth, and if anyone's seen me stumbling around town lately sending prompts into Herman and Corin, you probably think I look ridiculous too. For the mobile use case of getting good quality microphones, we've mentioned in some previous episodes how the quality of a microphone is, in mobile devices, mobile headphones, is often very bad because it's very cheap to put in a really crappy microphone. So frequently we'll see wireless earbuds that deliver outstanding sound, and of course no one's going to make a pair of earbuds and not put in a microphone, because then they're not useful for calls. But often the microphone is worse than you think, and it's only when someone says I have a hard time hearing you, or when you use it to record audio like I'm recording this prompt, that you actually hear how bad it is. For voice recognition and voice clarity specifically, I have a Polytronic 5200. They have such a good name. Poly 5200. I'm thinking about the old brand. They have a really great name for making audio gear, but it's one of those over-the-ear ones that does look a bit Taxi Driver in 1990s. It gives you that kind of aesthetic. Probably not the fashion statement most people are looking to make. So my question for you, Herman and Corin, is I often say that it's better to talk about what works the best in terms of a form factor than it is to talk about a specific product, because products and manufacturers and names change constantly, whereas the types of microphones are much more stable. That form factor, one ear, over the ear, and a little boom extending a little bit. I mean, when we're outside, we need to have noise rejection as a feature. You can probably hear the guy strumming on his guitar behind me here. And we have Bluetooth as an important thing and good codec support. We've also got something that doesn't look ridiculous. I mean, it might be more effective to have a literal boom microphone headset that's mobile, but I think that would make my Poly 5200 look like a thoroughly cool fashion accessory. It might be better audio, but I think it would not be the most stylish option. So Herman and Corin, I'd love to get your thoughts on what works well for good quality microphone recording in the mobile context. By that I mean out on the street, out and about. I think one more thing to add to the spec list is, in this environment, it's got to be waterproof, or at least water resistant, rain resistant, right? We don't want something that's going to be stop working if it just gets a drop of rain on it. And sometimes let's also think about wind as another thing we easy to forget about. It's going to be very hard to get something truly wind resistant, but ideally something that can take a bit of wind as well without that totally distorting the audio. So Herman and Corin, that's my spec list. What would you recommend in terms of microphones to get the best audio quality for compatibility with the phone, specifically an Android? Let's talk about the type of microphone, and then let's talk about actual models, manufacturers and prices in today's episode of My Word Prompts.
You know, Herman, I was walking through the park the other day, and I saw at least 5 different people holding their phones like a piece of toast, talking directly into the bottom edge. It is becoming the universal gesture for the modern age. We are all just out here narrating our lives into these little slabs of glass, looking like we're about to take a bite out of a digital sandwich. It is a strange sight, isn't it? We have these incredibly powerful computers in our pockets, yet the way we interact with them physically feels so primitive.
It really is the era of the voice memo. Herman Poppleberry here, by the way. And you are right, that toast-holding posture is now the international signal for I am currently productive, or I am leaving a very long, very detailed message for my group chat. But as we have discussed before, the ergonomics of that are just terrible. It is awkward, it is conspicuous, and honestly, you look like you are trying to take a bite out of your data plan. It is the antithesis of the seamless tech future we were promised in the movies. Where are our hidden lapel mics? Where are our subtle high-fidelity arrays? Instead, we are all walking around like we are testing the structural integrity of a grilled cheese.
And that is exactly what Daniel is getting at in today's prompt. He is asking us about mobile microphone options for high-quality voice transcription. He is tired of looking ridiculous while he is out and about in Jerusalem, and he wants a solution that actually works for his Android setup. He is looking for that holy grail of mobile audio, something with great noise rejection, Bluetooth support, a modern look that does not make him look like a call center agent from 1999, and it needs to handle the elements like wind and rain. Daniel is a tech communicator, so for him, the spoken word is literally his raw material. If the capture is bad, the whole workflow falls apart.
It is a tall order, but it is a fascinating one because the technology has moved so fast in the last couple of years. We are recording this in February of 2026, and the landscape of mobile audio has shifted significantly since the early days of the pandemic. Daniel mentioned his own benchmarks where his OnePlus phone actually beat out some dedicated microphones in terms of word error rate for transcription. That is a huge point to start with. The best microphone is often the one closest to your mouth, but if you want to keep your hands free and your dignity intact, we have to look at the specialized hardware. The fact that his phone is winning in some tests tells us that the internal processing on modern flagships is doing a lot of heavy lifting, but it also suggests that his external mics might not be optimized for the specific frequency response that AI transcription engines crave.
I love that he used a test script about the history of coffee for his benchmarks. That is very Daniel. But it raises a good point. If the phone's internal mic is already doing a decent job because of proximity, what are we actually gaining when we move to an external mobile microphone? Is it just about aesthetics, or is there a genuine performance leap for AI transcription like Whisper or other speech to text engines? We have to remember that transcription isn't like music recording. We aren't looking for warmth or character. We are looking for clarity, separation, and a high signal-to-noise ratio.
It is a bit of both, but mostly it is about consistency and the environment. When you are using the phone's internal mic, you are relying on the manufacturer's tuning, which is usually optimized for phone calls, not high-fidelity transcription. In episode 598, we talked about how audio engineering is essentially the first step of prompt engineering. If the audio is clean, the AI has a much easier time. When you move to an external mic, especially one with a dedicated form factor, you are looking for better signal to rejection of everything that isn't your voice. Think about Jerusalem. You have the wind whipping through the stone corridors, the sound of the light rail, the general bustle of the Mahane Yehuda market. A phone mic, even a good one, is omnidirectional by nature. It hears everything. A good external setup creates a cone of silence around your words.
So let's break down these form factors for Daniel. He mentioned the Poly 5200, which is that classic over-the-ear piece with the little boom arm. It is the gold standard for voice clarity, but as he said, it has a very specific aesthetic. It says, "I'm about to close a very important real estate deal while I drive my mid-sized sedan." It is very 1990s corporate. If we want something more modern and less bulky, where do we go? We need to find that balance between looking like a professional and looking like a cyborg from a low-budget sci-fi movie.
The first category to look at is the high-end true wireless earbud with a focus on voice. Most people think of earbuds for music, but for transcription, the microphone array is everything. Take something like the Sony LinkBuds S or the newer Jabra Evolve series. These use what is called beamforming. They use multiple microphones to create a virtual zone around your mouth, and they digitally ignore everything outside of that zone. Think of it like a security guard who only lets your voice through the gate and keeps the street noise outside. That is our first analogy for the day, by the way. The security guard of the soundstage.
I like that. So the beamforming acts as a filter. But Daniel mentioned wind and water resistance. That is where a lot of these sleek earbuds struggle. If you are walking through a windy street in Jerusalem, those tiny little microphone holes on an earbud act like little whistles. The air rushes over them and creates that low-frequency rumble that just destroys transcription accuracy. I have seen transcripts where the AI thinks a gust of wind is the word shh. Or even more bizarrely, it tries to turn the wind noise into actual words, creating these surreal, poetic hallucinations in the middle of a tech memo.
You are spot on. Wind is the enemy of the tiny microphone. It creates turbulence at the diaphragm level. If Daniel wants something that handles the wind, he might want to look at the form factor of a specialized wearable microphone. There are these clip-on options, often called lavalier or lapel mics, but the modern versions are wireless and much smarter. For example, Shure and Sennheiser have been playing in this space for a long time. The Shure M V88 Plus is a great piece of gear, though it is often more for stationary recording. But if we look at the wireless clip-on market, like the Rode Wireless Me or even the DJI mic series, those are becoming very popular for mobile users. They have physical windscreens, those little fuzzy dead cats which are the only real way to stop wind noise at the source.
But those are usually quite bulky, aren't they? They are like little squares clipped to your shirt. Daniel specifically said he wanted something that isn't too bulky and has a modern aesthetic. Clipping a plastic box to your collar might not be the look he is going for while he is out with Hannah and Ezra. It feels a bit too much like he is filming a YouTube vlog about his morning walk. Is there something that bridges the gap between the professional lavalier and the consumer earbud?
Fair point. If we want to stay sleek, we have to go back to the ear-worn category but look for specific acoustic engineering. There is a company called Shocks, formerly Aftershocks, that makes bone conduction headphones. Now usually, these are for listening, but their OpenComm model has a dedicated noise-canceling boom microphone. It looks a bit more like a headset, but it is very lightweight and leaves your ears open, which is great for situational awareness while walking. However, it still has that boom arm. If we want to ditch the boom arm entirely, we have to look at how the digital processing handles the voice.
What about the neckband style? I know they have fallen out of fashion a bit, but for battery life and microphone placement, they used to be great. The microphones are closer to the throat and can be angled better. Is anyone still making a high-quality neckband mic that doesn't look like a piece of sports equipment from 10 years ago?
Not many, honestly. The industry has really moved toward the true wireless format. But here's where it gets interesting for Daniel's specific use case of Android. Android has much better support for various Bluetooth codecs than people realize. If he finds a microphone or a headset that supports aptX voice, he is going to get much better transcription results. aptX voice is a codec specifically designed to provide high-definition voice quality over Bluetooth. Standard Bluetooth monoprofiles, like the ones used for most calls, usually cap the frequency response at about 4 kHz. That sounds like a tinny radio. It cuts off all the high-end detail that helps distinguish between an F sound and an S sound. aptX voice doubles that to 16 kHz.
That is a huge jump. That extra frequency range must be vital for distinguishing between similar sounding words, especially for an AI model like Whisper. If the AI can hear the crispness of a T or the sibilance of an S, the word error rate is going to plummet. It is like the difference between looking at a blurry photo and a high-resolution one. When the AI is guessing what you said, you want to give it as many pixels of sound as possible.
It is the second analogy of the day, The microphone is the lens of your voice. If the lens is smudged with low bitrate Bluetooth compression, the AI cannot see the words clearly. So, for Daniel, checking for aptX voice support on his Android phone and his chosen hardware is a pro move. Most modern flagship Android phones, including his OnePlus, support it, but many cheaper headsets do not. They fall back to the old hands-free profile, which sounds like you are talking through a tin can.
Let's talk about the noise rejection side of things. Daniel mentioned he wants something that can handle a guy strumming a guitar in the background, or just general city noise. There is a difference between passive noise rejection and active digital processing, right? How does a device decide what is Daniel and what is a street performer?
Huge difference. Passive rejection is about where the microphone is pointed and how it is shielded. This is why the Poly 5200 that Daniel mentioned is so good. It has a physical boom that puts the mic closer to the source, and it uses multiple mics to do phase cancellation. It literally subtracts the background noise from the foreground voice in real time. Modern earbuds try to do this with digital signal processing, or DSP. They use algorithms to identify what is a human voice and what is a car engine. The problem is that sometimes those algorithms can be too aggressive and make the voice sound robotic or underwater, which actually hurts transcription. The AI gets confused by the artifacts left behind by the noise reduction.
That is a fascinating trade-off. You want the noise gone, but you don't want the voice distorted. It reminds me of episode 853 when we talked about mobile photography and how too much digital sharpening can actually ruin the image. It is the same thing for audio. If the DSP overprocesses the sound, the AI transcription engine might get confused by the artifacts. It is like trying to read a document that has been through a paper shredder and then taped back together.
Right, so Daniel needs to find a balance. If he wants to avoid the bulky boom arm but still get that rejection, he should look at the Sony WF-1000X M5. I know they are marketed as music earbuds, but Sony has put a massive amount of work into their voice pickup units. They use an internal bone conduction sensor to detect when the wearer's jaw is moving. This tells the earbuds, hey, the person is talking now, so focus the microphones right here. It is incredibly effective at ignoring external sounds because it is using physical vibration as a secondary data point. It doesn't matter how loud the guitar player is, the guitar isn't vibrating Daniel's jaw.
That sounds like exactly the kind of high-tech solution Daniel would appreciate. It is subtle, it is built into a standard-looking earbud, and it uses multiple sensors. It is essentially using his own skull as a shield against the environment. How about the water and wind resistance on those? Jerusalem can get some serious rain in the winter.
They have an IPX4 rating, which means they can handle splashes and sweat, so a light rain in Jerusalem shouldn't be an issue. As for wind, they have a mesh structure designed to break up the air before it hits the mic. It is not as good as a physical foam windshield, but for a modern aesthetic, it is about as good as it gets. Sony actually redesigned the wind noise reduction structure specifically for the XM5 model because the XM4 had some issues with it.
Herman? Herman, are you there? It is your mother.
Mum, I am actually in the middle of recording the show right now. We are live.
Oh, I am sorry, Bobbler. I didn't mean to interrupt your little radio program. I just wanted to remind you that you have that dentist appointment on Tuesday. You know how you get with the flossing, Herman. Dr. Goldstein said he doesn't want to see any more of those cavities. He said your gums look like a construction site.
Hi, Dorothy. Don't worry, I will make sure he goes. I will even check his floss for him.
Thanks, Corn. Mum, I really have to go. We are talking about microphones and high-fidelity transcription.
Microphones? You should tell them about that nice one your father had for the synagogue. It was very loud. It looked like a silver potato. Anyway, I left some soup by your door. It is the chicken soup with the extra dill you like. Don't let it get cold. Love you, sweetheart.
Love you too, Mum. Bye. Sorry about that, everyone. Where were we? My dental hygiene is now public record, apparently.
I think we were talking about the Sony Link Buds and their bone conduction sensors, but now I am just thinking about soup. Honestly, though, the idea of a bone conduction sensor for voice pickup is brilliant. It feels like the most modern solution to Daniel's problem of looking ridiculous. No one knows you have a high-end transcription mic in your ear if it just looks like a regular earbud. It is the ultimate stealth setup for a tech communicator.
And if he wants to go even more professional, he should look at the Jabra Pro series. They have a model called the Jabra Evolve 2 buds. These are specifically certified for professional communication. They come with a dedicated USB adapter for a computer, but they work perfectly with Android via Bluetooth. They have what Jabra calls multi-sensor voice technology. It combines 4 microphones, 2 bone conduction sensors, and advanced algorithms. They are designed for people who need to take calls in noisy offices or on the street, so for transcription, they are top tier. They are basically the Poly 5200's brains inside a modern earbud's body.
What about the price points? Daniel asked for specific models and manufacturers. We've mentioned Sony and Jabra. How much is he looking at for this kind of performance? Is this a $50 upgrade or a $500 investment?
For the high-end earbuds like the Sony XM5s or the Jabra Evolve 2 buds, he is looking at the $250 to $300 range. It is an investment, but if he is doing a lot of transcription work for his tech communications and automation projects, it pays for itself in the time saved from correcting errors. If he wants something a bit more affordable but still high quality, the older Sony LinkBuds S can often be found for around $130, and they still have excellent voice pickup. They are smaller and lighter too, which might fit his aesthetic better.
And what about the dedicated microphone manufacturers? You mentioned Shure earlier. Do they have anything that fits the mobile, non-bulky Bluetooth criteria? I know Shure is legendary in the music world, but how are they doing in the pocket-sized world?
Shure has the MoveMic series, which they just launched recently. It is a very small, clip-on wireless microphone that connects directly to your phone. It is much smaller than the DJI or Rode options. It is about the size of a thumb. It is designed for creators, but for someone like Daniel who wants high-fidelity voice notes, it is incredible. It is water-resistant with an IPX4 rating, and it has a very clean, professional look. It is not as discreet as an earbud, but it is much more of a dedicated tool. It is the kind of thing you clip on when you know you are going to be dictating for an hour.
Does it work well with Android? I know some of these specialized mics can be a bit finicky with the proprietary apps. Sometimes you get the hardware and then find out the software is an afterthought.
Shure has done a good job with their Motive app on Android. It gives you full control over the gain, the compression, and the EQ. This is a big deal because, as we mentioned in episode 725, most consumer speakers and mics have a smiley face, EQ curve, that boosts the bass and the treble. For transcription, you actually want a flatter response or even a slight boost in the mid-range where the human voice lives. Being able to tune that in an app before the audio even hits your transcription engine is a huge advantage. It is like being able to color grade your voice before the AI sees it.
That is a great point. If you can pre-process the audio to highlight the speech frequencies, the AI is going to have a much higher confidence score. Let's talk about the wind resistance again. Daniel specifically mentioned it. If he's using something like the Shure MoveMic or a small clip-on, how does he handle a gust of wind without looking like he has a giant fuzzy pom-pom on his shirt? Is there a middle ground between a bare mic and a dead cat?
That is the struggle. Physical wind protection is always better than digital. However, the MoveMic and similar modern units have very sophisticated digital wind reduction. They use a high-pass filter to cut out the low-frequency rumble that wind creates. If he is in a really windy spot, he might have to use a small windscreen, but they are making them smaller and more discreet these days. They are not the giant dead cats you see on film sets anymore. They are more like little foam caps that are barely noticeable.
I'm curious about the Bluetooth latency and how that affects things. If Daniel is using an Android phone, is there any risk of the audio dropping out or the connection being unstable while he is walking around? Jerusalem is full of radio interference and old stone walls that eat signals for breakfast.
With Bluetooth 5.3 and 5.4, which are in most new Android flagships like his OnePlus, the connection is incredibly stable. The real issue for transcription isn't latency, it is bandwidth. This brings us back to those codecs. If he is using a standard SBC or AAC codec, the audio is being compressed quite a bit. If he can use a microphone that supports LC3, which is part of the new Bluetooth Low Energy Audio standard, he will get much better quality with lower power consumption. His phone, if it is a recent model, likely supports it. He just needs to make sure the microphone does too. LC3 is the future of high-quality, low-power audio.
It sounds like the technology is finally catching up to the vision of just being able to talk naturally and have it perfectly captured. I remember back in episode 682, we talked about the power of the tiny microphones already in our pockets. But Daniel's point about looking ridiculous is real. There is a social cost to holding your phone like a piece of toast. People look at you differently. They think you're either a very busy executive or someone who has lost their mind in a very specific, modern way.
There really is. And for someone like Daniel, who is involved in AI and automation, his voice is his primary input method for a lot of his workflows. If he can streamline that with a high-quality wearable, he is essentially upgrading his interface with his entire digital life. It is not just about a voice memo, it is about how he interacts with his systems. It is about reducing the friction between a thought and a digital record of that thought. If he has to stop, pull out his phone, and hold it to his face, that friction might prevent him from capturing a great idea.
So, to summarize the recommendations for him, if he wants the absolute best noise rejection and doesn't mind an earbud form factor, the Sony WF-1000X M5 or the Jabra Evolve 2 buds are the top choices. They are discreet, they have bone conduction senses, and they handle the elements reasonably well. They are the professional's choice for invisible audio capture.
And I would add one more niche option. If he really wants to go for the modern aesthetic and doesn't want anything in his ears or clipped to his collar, he could look at the Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. I know it sounds like a curveball, but the microphone array in those glasses is surprisingly good. They have 5 microphones built into the frame, and because they are on your face, they are very close to your mouth. They use the same kind of beamforming we talked about. For transcription, they are remarkably accurate, and they are the ultimate in looking normal while you are out and about. Plus, they are water resistant enough for light rain.
That is a brilliant suggestion. I hadn't thought of the glasses. That fits the modern aesthetic perfectly. It is basically invisible tech. Daniel could be walking Ezra in the stroller, talking to his glasses, and everyone would just think he is talking to himself, which is much more socially acceptable than the toast holding. Or they might just think he is a very intense person, having a very intense internal monologue.
Or they think he is on a hands-free call. It is very Jerusalem chic. But in all seriousness, the microphone quality on those glasses has been a sleeper hit in the tech community. For voice notes and transcription, they are a very viable contender. They capture the spatial orientation of your voice, which helps the DSP isolate it from the environment. It is a very clever use of the form factor.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from bone conduction sensors to high-def Bluetooth codecs. It really shows that mobile audio isn't just about music anymore. It is about data. It is about getting the cleanest possible signal into these AI models so they can do their magic. We are moving from the era of recording sound to the era of capturing information.
It really is. And Daniel, with his background in tech comms, knows this better than anyone. The quality of the input determines the quality of the output. If you give a model like Whisper garbage audio, you get garbage text. If you give it a 16 kilohertz, aptX voice encoded, beamform signal, you get something that looks like it was transcribed by a professional stenographer. It is the difference between a rough sketch and a high-definition photograph.
Well, I think we've given Daniel plenty to think about. I am personally leaning toward the Sony earbuds for him, just for that bone conduction tech. It feels like the most elegant solution for someone who wants to blend in while staying productive.
I agree. The Sony XM5s are hard to beat for an all-around package, but those Ray-Bans are a close second for the cool factor. It really depends on whether he wants something in his ears or on his face. Either way, he is moving away from the toast holding, and that is a win for everyone.
Before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that if you are finding these deep dives helpful, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Whether it is Spotify or Apple Podcasts, those ratings really help us reach more curious minds like yours. We genuinely appreciate the support from our community. It keeps the lights on and the microphones powered up.
It makes a world of difference. And if you want to dig into our back catalog, you can find everything at myweirdprompts.com. We have over 800 episodes now, including those ones we mentioned about mobile photography and the science of sound. You can also reach us at show@myweirdprompts.com if you have a prompt of your own you want us to explore. We love hearing from you.
Thanks to Daniel for another great prompt. It is always a pleasure to dive into the technical nuances of his daily workflows. I hope this helps you find the perfect setup for those walks in Jerusalem, Daniel. Say hi to Hannah and Ezra for us. I hope the weather stays clear for your next dictation session.
Yes, all the best to the family. And remember, Herman Poppleberry is always here to help you navigate the world of high-fidelity voice notes. Even if my mom interrupts to talk about my dental hygiene and my soup preferences,
We will never let you live that down, Herman. I am going to be asking you about your flossing habits for the next 10 episodes.
I know. I have brought this on myself. This has been my Weird Prompts. Our music is generated by Suno.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We will catch you in the next one. Keep your audio clean and your prompts weird.
Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, my weird prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the flows from sloth, from man, from long-eared host. My weird prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep weird in mind.